What is going on, football fans? Back at it with another New York Giants video. Just kind of wanted to jump into the big story of the day, what we were all waiting for when we saw Daniel Jones go back into the game yesterday, and we saw that he couldn't put any pressure on his back foot when he went to make that throw. He had the hamstring injury, and a lot of people were scared, that he may miss the rest of the season, that he may miss, 3 or 4 games, and we don't know the complete timeline yet, but the news that has come out based off of the things that you started to hear yesterday is much more encouraging. Now, do I think Daniel Jones will play next game against Seattle? I would lean no. I mean, the New York Giants in the past have shown that they're going to be very cautious with their young quarterback, as they should be. He had a high ankle sprain last year. A lot of people thought he could have played after a game. They decided to hold him out too. But I kind of wanted to jump into exactly what Ian Rappaport had to say. A number of other people tweeted about this. I think Patricia Traina also talked about some potential quarterbacks that they may be looking to bring in. Now, if they were to bring anybody in from the outside, I think at this point, they're bringing him in as depth to be a backup. Obviously, if Daniel Jones is unable to play, I would think Colt McCoy will get the start, and I'll talk further about that in this video. And hopefully, it's only for 1 week against Seattle. But according to Ian Rappaport, he said this: Giants quarterback Daniel Jones underwent tests on his hamstring today, and sources say he did avoid major injury. So that's the first great thing, right? It doesn't sound like it's a tear. It sounds like it's a mild sprain, or whatever the terminology is. He has an outside chance at playing Sunday, though we'll know more if he's able to get on the field and test in a few days. The New York Giants will have plans with Jones and without him. The first thing I'll say to that is, if he's saying an outside chance, and that's basically what everybody else is saying, I doubt he's going to play. And I personally, as a fan, don't want to see him play unless he's 100%. I don't see the need to further injure himself in a year in which we're 4-7, and I want to make the playoffs just as much as anybody else. But you got to play it safe. You can't risk, damaging your quarterback for the future. And if we plan on doing anything in the playoffs, well, the Giants are going to need Daniel Jones at full health anyway. And we still have 5 more games, and we all knew it was going to be tough sledding over these next 4 games. And if we could even win one of them, the Giants stand a very good chance to make the playoffs, because I think they're going to beat the Cowboys the last week, and 6 wins may very well get us in. But you don't want to rush Daniel Jones back. He's starting to build confidence. The offense is starting to flow a little bit better. They're not turning the football over. And you don't want Jones coming back unless he's 100%. Because if he isn't, he's going to further damage it. He could potentially further damage the injury. The other thing I want to talk about with Jones is he's got to get better at sliding. They got to teach him that. He's got to learn when to get down. And when he takes off for runs and he knows he can't slide, well, then he has to think twice, stay in the pocket, and get rid of the football. I love his ability to run. I think it's imperative in today's NFL, especially for his skill set. I think it is a weapon he needs to use, but he needs to use it smarter. When you watch guys like Kyler Murray run, when you watch guys like Russell Wilson run, they know when to get down. They know how to set up their run so they don't take as many hits as Daniel Jones does. And it wasn't just that play yesterday. And throughout the year, he had a number of hits, even yesterday. I remember he took a hit to his shoulder. He's got to get better in that area. Otherwise, this is going to be a repetitive cycle, year in and year out. You look at guys like Ben Roethlisberger. He's a guy that always misses 2-3 games every year, not because he's a runner, but because he tries to extend plays in the pockets and he takes a lot of hits. And I don't want my quarterback doing that. Daniel Jones, that's one area where I think he needs to improve. He's already missed portions of last year, and it looks like this year, even though there is an outside chance he will play, I will lean that he will not. And if he's not going to play, the question is, what will the New York Giants do? Well, of course, Colt McCoy came in this week, and he went 6 for 10. He looked decent. He's a game manager. He's not going to do anything special. And a lot of people are pointing to potential quarterbacks that they could bring in from the outside, guys that are, bigger names. And my answer to that is, I'm okay with bringing somebody in from the outside to be a backup. But I don't think you're going to be able to bring somebody in from the outside on a week's notice, especially because this is probably only going to be 1 game, maybe 2, that is going to be able to perform better than Colt McCoy is. Colt McCoy has practiced with these players throughout the season, throughout the first 10, 11, 12 weeks, however long it's been. He's familiar with the scheme. He's a veteran. He's been in the league. Yeah, he's a backup for a reason. And I see the media picking on him, and they're saying he's, his career record in December. Tom Rock had some kind of tweet with that. He's not a winning quarterback. There's no doubt about it. He's a backup, but he's a guy that's a veteran. He knows the scheme, and the Giants will have to come out with a game plan similar to what they've done the last, 4 weeks, which is a run-first approach. Of course, that Seattle's going to try to stack the box, but one thing I will say, Seattle's weakness is their defense, specifically the passing defense. The passing defense, from what I understand, if I remember correctly, is the worst in the league. And if it's not the worst, it's damn near close. So I do think the Giants will have opportunities to throw the football. It's going to come down to setting up the run, establishing the run, and I'm sure Seattle's going to try to stack the box and try to make Colt McCoy throw the football. But McCoy gives us the best chance to win, in my opinion. I don't think there's going to be a guy, I know there's going to be big names that people are going to talk about bringing in, but I don't think there's a guy that you could bring in on short notice and ask him to come in and be able to do a job, 5 days before the start of the game. I've seen teams try to do this numerous times. It rarely works when you bring in another quarterback. You got to make do. You got to make do with what you got, and it's why it goes back to the old adage, you're only as good as your backup quarterback. The Philadelphia Eagles, to their credit, they were great with it. New York Giants won a Super Bowl with their backup quarterback. But I understood the New York Giants line of thinking going into this year because they looked at this year as a year where they were rebuilding, where they weren't going to be competing for a Super Bowl, and they wanted to build their confidence in Daniel Jones. So you don't want to bring in a guy that's going to rock the boat, a guy that fans are going to start to talk about, start him. Could you imagine if we had a more notable quarterback as the backup in week 4, week 5? Half the fan base would have been calling for him to start. So I think the Giants made the right decision bringing in an established backup, a guy who knew his role to start the year. Going forward, if Daniel Jones is going to be the guy when we plan to compete for situations like this, yes, you're probably going to want a guy that could step in and really man the fort. And not to say Colt McCoy can't, but maybe a guy with a little bit more experience, a guy that you trust a little bit more, and maybe that's something that the New York Giants will address in free agency this year or potentially the draft. Colt McCoy's not a guy we have a lot of confidence in to go out and win football games. It doesn't mean that we can't, though. Seattle, well, they do have a phenomenal offense with Russell Wilson, and by no means am I picking us. By no means do I think we'll win this game. But if the Giants are able to do what they've done the last 6 weeks, running the football, there's no reason to think we can't at least stay within this football game. It's not like Daniel Jones has been airing it out for 400 yards. Yes, he's more of a weapon with his legs, and yes, I don't trust McCoy nearly as much, nearly the same amount. But if they could run the football, get in the second and third and manageable, maybe McCoy can manage the game against the suspect defense in Seattle. We'll have to wait and see how that all plays out, but by no means do I want the New York Giants to rush him back. That would be the worst thing they could possibly do. I would much rather Daniel Jones come back 100% against the Arizona Cardinals. And, you get the best of him there. He's confident in his ability. He's confident in the way in which he could play. That's the route the New York Giants should take. You don't want to rush this guy back. And we only really need to win 1 out of the next 4 because I think we're going to beat Dallas, and 6 wins probably gives us close to a 50% chance to make the playoffs. Of course, we'll have to wait and see what happens tonight in the Philadelphia Eagles game. I think I'll be streaming that game with Bad Dog. I got to text him. But we'll see what happens there if I don't get kicked out of the hotel. But we'll see what happens there, and then we'll have a better picture of how the division's going to work out. You look at Washington's schedule. Washington is more than likely going to lose next week. They're playing against a team in Pittsburgh who hasn't lost all year. So there's no reason to rush them back. Obviously, you want to win as many games as you can, but this isn't the time to do it. We're not a Super Bowl contender. You have a young quarterback. You want him to come back fully healthy, fully equipped, ready to build off of what he's done over the past 2 weeks. So if I'm the Giants, it sounds like if there's a possibility he could come back this week, it's very probable he'll probably be able to be back against Arizona. But who knows? Maybe it'll be 2 weeks. Maybe it'll be 3 weeks. We don't know right now. But the main thing to this story that's very encouraging is that it doesn't seem like it's going to be a huge injury, something that's going to be career-threatening. It's going to be short-term. And expect Joe Judge to handle this the same way that Bill Belichick does. And we all know how Bill Belichick handles injuries. He will tinker with it. He won't tell you up until the day of the game. I expect the Giants to do something very similar. Maybe they'll bring in somebody that has familiarity with the team. People have brought up Cooper Rush. People have brought up Alex Tanney. I could see them making a move like that. Don't expect anybody huge in terms of a name. But we'll see. We'll see what the New York Giants decide to do. And if they bring in a quarterback, I'll be sure to have a video up on it. But expect Colt McCoy to be the starter against Seattle if Daniel Jones can't go. As always, guys, if you like what you watch, please subscribe. Drop a comment. Maybe give me a little thumbs up. Cheers.